Okay, we're off to the races. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining today. I am so excited that we have this time together. I hope all of you had an opportunity to reach into your inbox, read, and reply to Amy. Amy Hager is our featured guest speaker today, and she is going to help us work through newsletters and engagement. I know that there have been a lot of conversations back and forth about questions people have, and just, how we're going to use today's time. So I'm not going to take up a lot of it on the front end blathering. What we're going to do is we're going to welcome you. So welcome and welcome, Amy. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
And if you have any technical questions or any trouble while we're going through the presentation today, please reach out to Clarissa. Clarissa Page is always the most amazing Zoom producer around. She is the backbone of all of these productions, so she can help you with your questions or any tech issues that you have. She could probably even help you with any webinar series that you may be deploying. So feel free to reach out to her in any way possible. Chat is probably the fastest for today. One thing that you'll want to do is you will want to have your phones out because we are going to be scanning a QR code and going through a brief Mentimeter survey. And with that, here we go. So today what we're going to discuss is welcome back. We want you to stay up to date with internal comms, so please connect with me on LinkedIn. I make it a special point that as soon as you all register, I go through all of the registrants and I match them up on LinkedIn, and I send you all just a little note to tell you that I'm glad that we're connecting, and I hope that you're as excited about the event that you're going to join as I am about the event that I'm going to deliver. So if you don't think that we're connected on LinkedIn, check your DMs and accept that connection request so that you can stay up to date on all of the cool things that we post about internal comms and things that are internal comms curious or tangential. Also, there is a newsletter that we produce called Creating Clarity from Chaos. And that is on hiatus for the summer, but will be coming back in September, early October. So if you accept the connection request, I think it gives you an opportunity to become one of the newsletter recipients. Click that or click the little bell next to my name on my profile, and you will stay up to date on all the cool things, including upcoming webinar series or collateral and assets from previous webinars that you may have missed. So those are the two things in the welcome back section. The next piece is to have a conversation with Amy after our survey, and then we will roll immediately into the group discussion, and then I'll make a quick 15-minute connection from what she's talked about to what we generally talk about as internal comms, and hopefully that will close the circle for you today. Excuse me. So let's dig into the problems that we're trying to solve, and we will use our phones now to scan this QR code. And as you get yourself logged in and scan that QR code, if you will love or thumbs up so I can see on the little slide that you are in and participating, that will be really helpful. All right, we've got a couple here. There's a little thumb at the bottom. If you could just click that, I will know that you are ready to go to the next slide. Okay, folks, I'm going to move forward. So how do you feel about your current newsletter? Oh, we've got some people that already started. Excellent. Okay. Put in a word or two that tells us how you feel about your current newsletter. Let's see what we see as we move forward in this. Frustrated, non-existent, stale, dated, limited, interesting. All right. Long, yeah. Boring. That's not a good one. Oh, this is fun. You guys are now getting into it. Good job. Thank you. Developing dry, ho hum, curious. Curious is always a good way to feel. That's the one that moves the needle. Okay, I'm going to start with our next slide. How do you wish you felt about your newsletter? Kind of gave you a little hopeful image on the side, standing out there in the flowers with the sun either rising or setting, depending on your perspective. Ooh, succinct, that it works, that it's engaging. You wish you felt excited and proud. Effective, worthwhile, well read. Yes, that's a good one. Excellent. Oh, I'm loving this. You guys are good with words. No wonder you're all internal communicators. Excellent. I'm going to go on to the next slide. What are the 3 main comms channels that your organization uses? Email, intranet, newsletter. Okay, excellent. Ooh, we've got an other. I'll be interested to find out what that is. Looks like we all rely predominantly on email, and then between the newsletter and the intranet, those are probably our 3 highest use cases. Then we've got a little bit of the text chat Teams situation going on, not a lot of digital signage and very little phone call, though that poor young lady with that switchboard in front of her, I feel for her. I can hardly imagine what it was like back in those days. I may be old, but I'm not that old. Okay, let's see. Where does your newsletter live? Does it live in email or on the intranet or potentially hard copy? Some organizations still do hard copy newsletters. Or maybe you don't have a newsletter, but you do some sort of weekly or monthly or bi-monthly roundup. Or you may not have anything in place at all, but let us know. Fantastic. Okay. Emails winning by a mile. Gotcha. All right. Let's go on to what is the number 1 problem you're trying to solve regarding your newsletter? Oh, Earl, I will be happy to add that QR code. Let me.
I actually just put the URL in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So getting more opening clicks from the audience, open rate, being more engaging and not having to cover everything under the sun, yes. Better segmentation, yes. Less unsubscribed, upping engagement, open rates, increasing regular readership. Amy, are you seeing anything in here that looks like it might be a trend?
A little bit. And I know a lot of you responded back to the email that I sent with a question that you were hoping to have answered today. And I think this is definitely a trend of, we're doing this action, but are people actually utilizing it?
Yep, I think so. I think so. Does your organization have a communications policy? Smiley Tigger says, yes, we do, and it's time to party. Pumpkin, she's a little bit down in the mouth. She said, nope, we don't have a communications policy, and I really wish I had one because I'm confused and I'm tired. And then Noodle, she's just a little confused herself. She says she's not sure. She doesn't really know where to go to find that information. And yes, all three of these are dogs that have been part of our family. Currently, Pumpkin and Tigger are back here. They are among us, and Noodle, she was the precursor that told us that we are going to be a German Shepherd family dog or dog family from here on forward. She trained us very well. I often say that of the two dogs and the two humans, my husband and myself, I am the third smartest in our house, which means that poor David comes in a fourth.
I was curious how your ranking was.
He's not a distant fourth. He's almost tied, but yeah.
Too funny.
All right. Well, thank you for participating in the survey. I appreciate that. I think that it's a great way to get us all thinking about our newsletters, the things that we want to engage in and fix, and the troubles that we're trying to troubleshoot, and to have an opportunity to bring our best forward in an amazing, engaging conversation with Amy. Amy, I'm going to let you do your own introduction and bio, because I would just go on and on into the night about how I think you're terrific and wonderful and fun, but that's not your professional credentials. So I'm going to stop sharing and let you share and hand it off from there.
Awesome. Well, thanks. And welcome everyone. Again, I think I want this session to be very interactive. So use that chat. If you want to come on camera, I love seeing your friendly faces. And I would love for some of you actually to come on and ask some questions even. So I know that my background in marketing communications actually started when I was a child. I used to race go-karts, and therefore, I'd have to really go out and promote myself and figure out how to get sponsors to give me money for tires and gas and how to build a following. And I really mastered this skill in adulthood, thank goodness, and really in the nonprofit space. So I focused a lot of my career working in associations and chambers, especially really focusing on those that have member dues and having your revenue come in from member dues, and then also having other programs and offerings that we would sell. Currently, I work both in the nonprofit space and in the for-profit space, because what I really found is when there are good practices, it should be utilized in all industries. And I have also found that not all practices can be utilized in every single industry, which kind of is the the crutch, right? We wish this was easy. There was just a framework and a magic wand that would make this all work, and it's not the case. Your audiences are always going to be very different. Your communication style, the words that you're using, so your messaging is always going to be very different. And so what I do want to cover is some of the basic fundamentals today, that whether you're sending an internal communication or an external communication, utilizing some sort of mass communication system, whether that be email systems, whether that be some sort of portal like an intranet or a team task tool. I really kind of want to talk through some of the very general practices that are going to get you better engagement. And sometimes this just seems super ridiculous. And I'm going to put that out there right now, that you're like, do I really need to do this? And I really want to challenge you, because we think this should be easy, but we're actually really asking a lot from people to engage with us. And there's a lot of asks that are being already asked to them, whether they're members or whether they're staff. And so thank you to the few of you who shared your screenshots, shared your emails beforehand. We've got some great visuals to kind of walk through today with. And so I want to go ahead and get started with an email that Sarah is sending. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this up on my screen so that you can see what I am looking at. As soon as I can get the Zoom, there we go. All right, so hopefully you all are looking at Sarah's Monday mission moment. And Sarah, I think you're here with us today, aren't you? I gotta scroll through.
I am.
Good, good, good. Can you just give us kind of the highlight of what this is, who this goes to, how do you deliver it? I mean, we can kind of tell from some of the information that's on the screen, but just give us a quick highlight of what we're looking at.
Yeah. So I work in a nonprofit, Animal Humane Society, and our staff, we have remote staff, we have hybrid staff, we have on-site staff. And especially for the folks who are working remote, they don't get as much hands-on with our mission day to day as some of the folks who are working directly with animals and that kind of thing. So our leadership wanted to find a way to really reinforce the mission on a regular basis for staff. And so they suggested we start sending these Monday mission moments. So I work with staff across the organization to find stories that we can share with staff. Sometimes they come from staff, sometimes they come from our adopters, sometimes they come from our clients. It kind of runs the gamut, and we try to feature all areas of the organization. So these get sent out every Monday morning. So a lot of our remote staff are working Monday through Friday. So this is kind of how they start their week and get them inspired.
Awesome. And so then the goal of this is to get them inspired and really start the week off on I guess a good note, right? And how long have you been doing this email, Sarah?
Yeah, we've been doing this, I would say probably, gosh, at least 9 months at this point. So it's relatively new to our internal communications program. And we've gotten really good responses to it. I've only gotten one email from a staff member who said they don't read them. But other than that, all of the responses have been really positive.
Well, one thing I always say is, your messaging works well when people respond positively and also when you repel. So, all right, that works, right?
Yep.
Where do you feel like is there any challenges or any struggles that you're kind of feeling around your Monday mission moment?
Yeah, I think I haven't really run into any major challenges with it. I think sometimes the hardest part can be finding what we want to share that week. But we have a really great adopter success story program where adopters are just automatically reminded to submit success stories. So we can always pull from that. But yeah, I think it's just, it's one more thing on my plate, other than the newsletter and the all staff meeting and everything else that we do. But in the big scheme of things, it doesn't add that much to my plate. So it's been overall pretty positive for us.
Okay. And you're kind of starting to get my brain thinking. Are you using this content anywhere else outside of this email to the staff?
So if it's an adopter success story, those get posted. We actually have a Tumblr blog still, so those get embedded on our website. People see those. Our executive assistant to our CEO shares them with our board of directors, so they're getting them as well. But other than that, I don't think they're getting shared. I do know that we have gift officers on staff for fundraising, and I'm guessing that a number of them also share them with some of their donors.
Lovely. So I think, to be honest, you're getting really great repeat content opportunities from what you're sharing with me. So the donors, sharing on social media or utilizing it on a blog, sharing it with your board, sharing it with volunteers. So I think repurposing this content is really, really good.
Mhm.
Amy Avery is asking, the other question that was kind of popping in my head is, are you able to look at any metrics around this, or are you sending it like using your Outlook? Are you using a mass email system or Outlook to send this?
So this is getting sent through Outlook. So unfortunately, I don't have any metrics other than the anecdotal feedback that I receive. And then also Outlook, now you can react via emoji to
Yeah.
emails. So I do see how many people are reacting via emoji.
Okay.
And so, it's a small group that uses those emojis, but I can see, like, is this only getting 3 hearts or is it getting 12 hearts? So
Yeah.
you can kind of gauge it a little bit that way too.
I love it. So I think when I look at this as far as the content, I think you're getting really great uses out of this. The only thing that I could suggest that might make this just 10% better
Mhm.
is to really actually, what is your mission statement? And is that really in here? And to really tie that gap together of, this is what we do, this is our mission. And
Mhm.
so it could be adding an extra line or two in there, because when we can continue to get the mission in front of our staff, in front of our board members, in front of those who are making decisions for our organization to move this organization forward, you can't never remind people of the mission enough, because a lot of people come with other ideas that could be loosely related to a mission that end up then being an extra thing for you to do. And
Mhm.
so that would be the only suggestion that I have to make this about 10% better, is if you can actually bridge that gap back to your mission, and it could be an easy line in the text. And you may feel like you're just repeating yourself over and over and over and over and over again, and that is okay. It
Mhm.
doesn't always need to be refreshing. It doesn't always need to be new. It doesn't always need to be amazing. It is what it is, and it's the foundation for your organization. And I would be super intrigued. I love this test of how many of my board members and how many of my staff can actually verbalize what the mission of my organization is. And a lot of times I find that they can't.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
the next question that I ask is, well, what does this organization focus on? What is our main purpose? And when that answer begins to get very vague or spread across, and people are having their own individual interpretations of it, that's when I really know that there isn't a clear connector of what this organization is doing and what the mission is, and that needs to be shared more internally to keep people on the same page, and to really keep us, I'm going to say, like, out of scope creep, or out of creeping away too far from the mission. So you could always plop this in a mass email type system to look at the clicks and to look at the opens, but there's always that question of ease for me to build and execute on versus ease to utilizing the technology to have all of the data. And if you were only sending this to your staff and not using this messaging anywhere else, I would have encouraged you to take it over to a mass email system to look at some of the data to see if people are actually reading this. But because you're utilizing this in so many other places, I think it's okay the way that you're doing it right now. You don't really need to throw this strategy out or make any huge, massive changes with the technology and how you're delivering it. It could be another way for you to gauge are people reading this and are they actually looking at it? But you're kind of getting that already with those emojis and everything along those lines. And so I don't think the technology piece is something you need to change, but again, it could be a conversation that you have internally just to kind of see, well, what are the opens and what are the click rates on these?
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would love if there's any other ideas or any other questions that you all have related to the Monday mission movement that Sarah is sending out. please throw those in the chat. You guys are in this day in and day out as well. So if there is something that's working super duper well at your organization that you're like, ooh, I think Sarah could be using this here as well, then I would love for you guys to share that in the chat, because I can't be the only person in the room with ideas, right? All right, Jesse, beautiful question. And I think we're sharing something of yours too, but headers and shorter text for talking points could be changes, right? You could be using Bitly to track any internal links to see if people are clicking it out and going outside of it to maybe read it on the Tumblr blog and things along those lines. But again, it's really looking internally of what is the purpose of this? Am I getting good use out of the content? And do I really need to be adding more of those things? And those are great internal conversations to have around your strategy. But these are really good points, Sarah R. and Jesse E. As well. So good share. All right, let's go on over to, okay, wait, I got to close that one out so I don't go to it again. And let me get this one open here. Oops. And we're gonna, Jesse E., I hope you're okay coming on and just giving us a quick, oh, come on, all the buttons, and I'm not pressing any of the right ones. There we go. All right.
Yes, I am here.
Hi, I'm so excited. I've enjoyed our email conversation, and I hope you don't mind. I've got two screens that I'm going to share of Jesse's, but I wanted to start here with the actual email communication since that's kind of our theme. But then I've got another screenshot that she sent me. So give us a deep dive on what the heck are we looking at? Who is this sent to? What are you using it for? Everything along those lines.
Sure. So this is like someone else commented. We send this out by email. It goes through Informs, which is
Yay.
email system, and then it also lives on SharePoints. This is our employee newsletter that goes out on paydays. So every other, you get paid, you get the neuron is what we say every other week. It includes everything from, it goes to 200 employees throughout the country. So kind of a smaller org. It covers everything from the message from Mary, who's our CEO, to HR updates, who's hired and fired. So it's a lot. It just keeps going and going and going. So we've gotten feedback that it's too long, yet people feel that they want to have everything. So that's anything else you want me to share on what this huge thing covers?
Since you're using Informs, I actually used to work at Informs, and I started as a client of theirs before there was responsive email design. So we used to have to design a desktop version and a mobile version if we wanted it to populate correctly on a mobile device. And so I was one of their very first clients to design a full-fledged mobile email campaign and deploy it to my entire organization. And so I've loved working with them over the years, and I'm super excited that you're using a system that gives you some data and results. Like, what is your open rate? Do you have an idea of the click rate on this? And are you able to share that with us?
Yep. We track it every 2 weeks. Our open rate averages around 67%. And our click rate really varies. It goes anywhere from 45 to 60%.
Okay, wonderful. And what kind of email system are you guys using internally to like send, personal emails? Are you on Outlook? Are you on, okay, so you're on Outlook. Okay, good. And the reason why I ask is some email technologies report and open back differently than others. Outlook is one where you actually get to click on the email and it counts as an open. but there's some other email systems out there, like it depends on how you have your Gmail set up, whether Gmail writes it back to report it as an open or not. But Outlook is pretty streamlined and easy. So I'm really glad that those open results are probably pretty accurate then, is what I'm saying.
Mhm. Okay.
And so what I love about this is I do love the photos. Again, you're sending this internal, so it's a
Mhm.
safe send, right?
Mhm.
If we were talking about a send that we are sending to an external list, like our member list, potential member list, event registration list, we would be talking a different story here. But I love that it's photo heavy. I love that it's color heavy. And so the only suggestions that I can really think of that might improve the engagement is if you made it a little bit easier to do some clicking. And so on Mary's video here, hold on one second. I got logged out of my email and now it's telling me I need, please. Oh, hold on. All right. What I would love to see is linking of the images a little bit more. So Mary's face, go ahead and link that to the video URL. And some of the other images below, maybe, I don't know if you guys want to put like people's LinkedIn on their photos, so that way people can start friending each other outside of the organization or anything along those lines. But if you're able to give us more of an opportunity to kind of click on something, then that's going to give us the better opportunity to really increase those engagements and give you more data too on what's going on internally. The other piece, and again, I'm sorry, my email logged itself out, which means I also got to get your other thing up. When you're doing like the job listings, maybe putting a link on the headlines to go to the landing page of those job listings. And I agree, it's a long email, but I hear you in the fact that if you're sending this every other week, you want to make sure that it includes important things and you want to train your users to know that they can go there for other job openings. They can go there to meet the new people, and maybe someone that they just saw in the hallway that they don't know. They would probably think to go back to that email and see like, well, who was recently hired? And so
Mhm.
I love that you're able to really kind of tie that back. And then I wanted to kind of share with everybody that screenshot that you sent me of the videos. And these videos are living in your intranet, right?
Mhm.
Okay. The one thing that I was thinking that could help is, and you guys, this is where it just sounds ridiculous. And sometimes I wish we didn't have to think this way, but having some, and you may have this and it's just not on the screenshot, having some sort of call to action to encourage someone to click on the video. So I'm making things up now, but I'm going to say, something along the lines of Mary is announcing what was spoken about at our board meeting, or Mary is announcing the location for annual meeting 2026. And click here to watch. And I have found if I can put the overlay button that's like the little play button on
Mhm.
a video, that improved my clicks like 6 or 7%, which just seems ridiculous because it's a video and we all should be intuitive enough to click on a video. But putting that little play button connects with our brains and the psychology of what we're trying to digest and gives us a very clear action of what you expect us to do when we land here. And so if
Right.
there's an easy way for you to add that, again, going back to my good old Informs days, I would have this as an image, but then I would overlay the play button on there. And so in the email, you would click this image, it would open it to YouTube and the video would start playing. And by adding that little play button on all of my images, it increased how many people actually were watching my videos.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So tiny, tiny little tweaks that make it super clear on where you want people to go and what you actually want them to do. and making sure that there's clear call to actions. And going back to what I think, maybe it was you, Jesse, that said something about headers with our last email with Sarah. Even when you're putting in those headers, hyperlinking those headers because they are the larger text. If you think about how much we fat finger when we're on our phone and making it easier because the header text is what's hyperlinked, is going to encourage us to kind of click and engage more with those emails.
Can I ask a
And
question?
yeah, go for it.
So it's timely to that. So I'm not just going out into left field, which I normally do. The idea of headers driving the content that is in your newsletter, and the idea that, and this happens with all of my clients, that there's too much in the newsletter, it doesn't speak to me. Rather than segmenting your newsletter into 5 different newsletters, how do you decide what content really should be in there? And how do you decide how long your average content is for each topic, so that you either are driving toward or away from becoming a beautiful bullet farm?
Yeah. And I think that one, it's getting to know the audience really, really well. Two, it is going back to some of these fundamental basics of making sure that your headlines are actually compelling and hyperlinked and reasons for people to engage. And by really, again, email marketing and any email communication is just the first step of what should start a conversation. If we stop looking at email as the end all be all, and you should just get everything from that, even when we're doing marketing to sell something, and we start looking at email as a reason to start a conversation, it really, really changes the focus of that. And so, you know, Sarah, knowing that she's been doing the Mission Monday Moment for 9 months now, would be really kind of cool for a next step if I was working strategy with them and trying to decide of, is this worth their team time? And again, I'm evaluating it from a quick glance. I think it is, because you're repurposing and reusing that content. But if they weren't, I would say we need to go on a little listening and conversation campaign. And we need to ask, hey, are you enjoying? And I, as Sarah, as the one who's creating this, I'd be going around being like, I love creating this thing, but I'm curious, do you enjoy it as much as I do? And inviting people to be in a conversation with you about it. And if they say, yeah, it's so great, like it does kind of perk me up on Mondays. Or if you get the people of, no, I don't read it. Well, why don't you read it? Like, what don't you find valuable? And I love having, and again, saying that you enjoy having these conversations to figure out how to improve how you're communicating. And again, you're not going to be able to communicate to everyone in the way they want to be communicated to in a mass way. It's a unrealistic expectation. You want to communicate to the masses in the way that they want to be communicated to, in the format that they want to be communicated to. There's always going to be those outliers. And so I really think having conversations, and especially if it's internal newsletters, internal posts, internal blogs, whatever you may utilize, having conversations, if you have the data like Jesse does from Informs, and you can see there's 30 people who consistently don't open this email, and you can start doing a listening session with those 30 individuals and talking through like, hey, what's going on? Like, you know, are you not finding value in this email that we're sending every other week? And they may have some great, insightful, tiny tweaks that you could be making that would improve on it. Or they could be 30 people that would say, I'd never open anyways. It doesn't matter what you do to it. And you've got to let that go. But it is an unrealistic expectation to think you're going to get 100% on any mass communication ever.
Boom. My God.
Again.
Everybody on this call, that was worth the price of entry. And I know that price was very, very low. But still, that was so good because I think that as communicators, we often forget two things. One, you can't please everybody and you can't take it personal. And two, that, and I'm always harping on this, but even in the corporate setting, communication is a dialogue. It's not a one-way street.
Right.
If you want to meet people where they're at and you want them to feel as though they're part of the organization and you want to increase job satisfaction, you have to have those conversations. It improves your newsletter. It improves the processes that you implement. It improves organizational awareness where people get to know each other and how to collaborate with each other. You have to have those connecting tissue conversations so that people know they're part of something and that what you're trying to build is designed for them, not just for some faceless, nameless leadership group. It's actually for them, to inform them, to make their life easier and better and more efficient and effective.
And I think by knowing the goal of the email that you're sending or of the communication that you're sending is also super duper important in making sure that you tie back your call to action to that goal. If the goal is for, and again, Jesse, I'm so glad you're a volunteer and I'm so sorry to just keep using you as the example, but we're all on the same page. If the goal is for people to listen to Mary's quick 4-minute update of what happened at the board meeting, boy, that better be a very clear call to action in the top of that email. If you just say clear call to action and compelling call to action at the top of that video over Mary's face or over Mary's head. If you
Gotcha.
just say, click here to watch Mary's recap of the board meeting, I don't know what's in it for me and I really probably don't care. But if we say something again, click here to hear about the 2025 annual meeting location, to hear about the board's decision on offering blah, blah, blah certification, to hear about, that's going to be a more compelling call to action than just click here to hear the board update. So think small in your messaging. I have another example and someone else that I want to bring on. Jennifer Russell is here today, and I don't have an actual example from Jennifer because she's having the conversation right now about whether or not they should even have a newsletter. And so, Jennifer, I'm kind of curious. Tell us first, like, what kind of organization are you working with? Who would this go out to? Is it just staff? Are they remote? Are they all in the same place? Kind of give us an idea of what's going on in your world.
Yeah. So I am the communications manager for a regional bank. We are in 12 states, almost 100 offices. And so our team's pretty spread out. We have just around like 1,200 associates. And so if we end up deciding to do a company newsletter, it will go to all of them.
Okay.
The reason that we started having this conversation just a couple of months ago really was we were seeing a need to kind of streamline some communications. There are multiple departments or groups within our organization who were sending regular emails to all of our associates. Some of those are for like regulatory reasons, and some of them are just reminders for things. But we do also have a company intranet, but it is underutilized, and we know that. Most people only head out to it if they need a form of some sort, but they're not really there to peruse the news or things that we have out there. And so that was kind of what started the conversation, was just to try to streamline some of that, give our associates like one place that they can get their information, and on a regular cadence, they know when to expect it, when it's going to be in their inbox. It's going to have all the different things that they need. And then our goal was to, ultimately push them back to our intranet to try to increase, some of that engagement too.
Okay. I love this, and I'm so glad that I asked you these questions and you came on to share. So, I would say if you are already doing some sort of intranet, internal communication, if you have a member organization and you have like a member portal where they can like leave questions in the form, and you have news going in there, you have job postings go in there, I would say, why have an intranet or a member portal and not have a direct email? Like, that is the next step to enhance what you currently already have. And so by utilizing what is going in there, you're repurposing the content. So pulling any of the news that's going in there, maybe, you have a form of the month, and we're coming up pretty soon on changing our insurance forms or deductions or whatever those things are, like in October and things, right? So those are forms that you can start populating in this email, because those questions are going to start happening soon. So I think it's such a great idea to kind of pull some of that micro content that you really want people to go focus on and really drive them to it, and utilizing email in order to do that. Now, the frequency, I think, is always the big question. And if you don't do it frequent enough, people are gonna be like, oh yeah, what is this email in my inbox again? I forgot, from last month or from last quarter. And so playing with your frequency to see what is the right frequency is going to be part of your deployment strategy. And I think a real deployment strategy can take anywhere from 12 to 24 months for you to really gain that data to decide what your strategy actually is. And I think that's one of my biggest suggestions is testing is key. And so whether you're deploying something new or you have something already and it's underperforming, you want to make sure that you're testing to get that 10% improvement. And so you can always ask the questions of, if you have something that's underperforming, is this email easy to follow? Or do you really have to pay attention to understand what is going on? And if you have to pay attention and read, and you don't have headlines that are easily clickable, and you don't have images that are easily clickable, and you don't have things that say what I'm going to get when I click, you've got to make this easy for people. They've already got enough stuff coming at them. And if you can make it easy as to what decision they need to make and what they need to click on and why they should click it on here, that's going to just make the engagement a little bit more. Another thing to think about is you don't have to send it to your whole audience to do a test. If you have, I think you said 1,200, Jennifer, and if I'm making this number up, then sorry about that. If you have a list of 1,200 locations and you're trying to get it to the 1,200 branch managers of those different banks, maybe take 10% of that list and send them and make them your test case, and really make sure that you're tracking their engagement. You're having conversations with them to see what's working, what's not working. And then from that focus group or test case, you can deploy something to the whole entire list. But trying to talk to 1,200 people is way worse than trying to talk to 120 people. It seems a little bit more achievable. And the other thing to think through too is, does this actually need to be an email? Is there a better way to be communicating this message to get the results that we're looking for? And I know some organizations are using things like their Slack channels, and they have a designated person on the comms team or on the HR team where, every Monday they're going and they're posting this thing in the Slack channel that is important for everyone to pay attention to this week. And it's one thing. And so it doesn't always have to be an email, but what I love about Jennifer's strategy is they have an intranet. They know it's being underutilized. How can they get in front of people to make sure that they're utilizing this thing and they're going to look at the news and everything along those lines? I would say use the email as your first trial. If you do have a Slack channel where all 1,200 people are at, and you have them in different focus groups and, based off of jobs, and sometimes it's more important to communicate the the enrollment forms about changing your insurance to them there, you can utilize that as well. But it sounds to me like it may be the easiest to deploy this on email first. And I am always a big fan of making sure that we go after what is easiest first, and then we can maybe go after the more difficult place second, or we might have found the solution that fulfills the need that we have, and we can roll with it. And don't make yourself wrong for not utilizing your Slack channel to post this information because it's performing well in email. So beautiful kind of questions to think through and to kind of ask as you're going through this process. Are there others on this call today who are in that phase where they don't really have an internal email, but they may have other ways that they're communicating, and so they're thinking about adding an internal newsletter? If you want to throw a yes in the chat, I'm just kind of curious to see if there's other people out there who are thinking their next best step is an internal email. Danette, you're one. Is there any other questions or conversations or that you've had internally that might help anybody else on the call today who's also going through this?
So we're totally new to internal comms. We have not had an official channel for that, or even any kind of official strategy around that. We have multiple ways we're sending information, but I loved what you said about it should be a conversation. It should be a start of a conversation, not, and I feel like everything we're doing right now is just pushing information. And it's haphazardly in many different ways. Like, we have one department from our president's office that does a video blog, but then we have an announcements email that goes out, and we have multiple mass emails, everything from, the required compliance emails that have to go out every year, excuse me, about drug awareness and drug and safety, to a flag lowering. And so it's just, pardon the term, it's a very shotgun approach to it. It's just like, let's just throw it out there somehow. And there's not any organization or strategy behind what's being shared, how it's being shared, etc. So that is where we're at currently. We don't have any funding, and we have me as the team right now. So I'm looking at different ways to bring all that, to bring all these different channels, and at some point maybe even determine, do we need them all?
Yeah.
We currently don't have a solid way to monitor any kind of metrics on our emails that go out. We will, starting in our new fiscal year, we'll be moving to Populo. And so that platform at least will be able to give us some true metrics and some ways to get feedback on the information that we're actually sending out. So I'm feeling like I'm drinking from a fire hydrant now, not just a garden hose. So anyway, I appreciate the information that's been shared, and I'm like furiously scrambling notes and from that direction.
Here's the thing. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to figure this all out instantly, right? It's not a magic wand. It does take time, and it does take testing. You're going to fail. There's things that aren't going to work well, and there's things that are going to work beautifully. And that is a part of the process. So making sure that you're having those expectation conversations with those who are above you, with your bosses, with the C-suite team. And I always say, when I am deploying a new communication tool, whether it's a newsletter and that's internally or externally, whether that's a social media strategy, whether that's a, again, a Slack channel or anything along those lines, communication strategy, I always approach it as, we're going to go ahead and give this a try and give this a test. I want to be able to come back with some data and some results to really talk through what the next steps are. And right now, based off of the knowledge that I know here today, I think this is our best bet to reach, again, whoever you're trying to reach. By at least phrasing it that way, you're not setting yourself up for people to think this is, the silver bullet. You're not setting yourself up when you come back and say, you know what, we sent 90 days worth of employee communications, 1 email a week to all 1,200 branches and every single employee, and our open rate was 6%. That's not good. So we have to figure out a way to make this better. And here's the next test that I think we can try, or here's where I think we should go next. But I think, you're going down the right path, Danette, with getting some sort of system that's going to give you some analytical data, so you're not just doing to do. And that takes time, and you can't build Rome in a day. So know that you're going down that right direction.
Yeah, yeah. I think that to me is that one of the unknowns, and I think just in our preliminary conversations, I feel like there are people above me that think, oh, we just will do internal comms and it'll solve all the problems. But yet we're going to do internal comms. That's the conversation we're going to do. And so I love, if you have any statistical data about, like, in these testing, and I loved what you said about the the deployment strategy and taking 12 to 24 months before we really know what works. I mean, any other, statistics like that you have, or that you could point me in that direction, that'd be wonderful.
So there is one, I don't know if this is statistics, and I hope that I'm going to put this HubSpot blog here in the chat. But this is a HubSpot blog that I have used to help other organizations guide their process for testing. And it's very tailored toward, like, outward emails for promoting things. But I think there's some really good gold in here to be utilizing with your internal comms. And so I think that's a place that you can really pull. But here's what I'm going to say, to be super duper honest, is, again, I find every organization is so dramatically different. If I was to say, here's the industry standards, I would just be making up numbers. And so I think the best bet for you to do is focus on finding the right solution for your organization and for your audience, and continuing to beat that drum, and knowing, again, that you're the expert. You've done some research, you've attended, workshops like this, and really believe in yourself. And if you are testing and you're not getting the results back that you are hoping, that is also really good data to have, because you tried something and it isn't right for your audience. And so that is another qualifying question, or another series of qualifying questions that you can ask as you look for the next thing that you may want to try. But what you're trying now makes the most sense, that I would say, from, like, again, an industry standard standpoint of how many different organizations I've worked with and helped with.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Totally.
Thanks
There's
so
a couple, there were a couple more themes and questions that I noticed in a lot of the email communication that I had with some of you leading up to this, and even in your results here today. And so I kind of want to give you a few more tips of, if you are sending sort of any email, whether it's, again, to promote events and registration and membership, or whether it's internally, that might give you the best chance possible to get the most clicks and the most opens. And I know, I think Jeannie, Yvonne, Ben, and Lois were kind of asking some of these questions, how to improve rates. Julia was also asking some questions about how to improve rates. And so one thing that I think is important to consider, if you can do it, and again, if you do not have the technology, if you do not have the team, and you do not have the staff to do this, do not make yourself wrong for it. But I find you get the best results when you can segment and target your lists and figure out ways to bunch them together to communicate to them, which is super vague. So let me dive in just a little bit to kind of give you some clarity on that. If you're an internal comms person and you're wanting to speak a different message to managers than the people underneath them, because the managers need to remember that they have to do their 360 reviews by July 31st. And then you have your team members who work underneath these managers. They could be getting a similar ISK message, but with different language. So the managers are, don't forget to do your team 360 reviews by July 31st. The message that goes out to those team members below can be, have you had the opportunity to participate in that 360 interview process? If not, there's some time before the deadline, which is July 31st, for you and your manager to do so. Feel free to go have a conversation with them to set a date to have this conversation. And again, you can totally tell I'm not in internal comms, and 360 interview things might be the wrong term, but I want to give you guys kind of an example. So tiny tweaks in the messaging between those two audiences are going to give you a much better return on your effort and getting them actually engaging, because you're feeling like you're speaking directly to them personally. So you're trying to send mass emails, but speak to individuals personally. And we feel when we're spoken to personally that we actually get to take action and get to do things. When we feel like we're being spoken to in the masses, we're less likely to take action. So how can you really connect to the hearts and souls of the readers? So segmenting and targeting your lists and targeting the messaging and the phrasing of the messaging is going to move your needle so much more further, instead of sending the entire organization wide saying 360 reviews are due by July 31st. What's in it for them? Make sure you break down. I talked a little bit about compelling calls to action. When you have a call to action, if it's in the text somewhere in your messaging, you want to make sure that you're using some different colors to really pull out those call to actions. Whether you're highlighting the text, whether the text is red instead of black, or blue instead of black, or green instead of black, but making sure, because when we skim through emails, we see all of this black text. And what's going to maybe give us a hot second to pause is text that is a different color. Do not go crazy though and overuse the different color. You've got to use it at discretion for call to actions only, and your call to actions need to be very compelling. You also need to give people more than one time to click. If you have this paragraph explaining something and then it says, go here to learn more, not helpful. What am I trying to learn more of? Go here to learn about certifications. Go here to understand what your enrollment form is due October 12th. Make sure that it is a clear call to action of why I want to click this link. No one cares to learn more. When you're doing your hyperlinks, please make sure that, again, you're hyperlinking headlines of different sections. You're hyperlinking your images. But again, I'm going to fat fingers, and this is something I learned from deploying those individual mobile responsive emails versus desktop. Please at least hyperlink 4 words of text. Hyperlinking 1 word is still not going to be enough for some people to click. Sometimes then they have to zoom in to click. That is too much action. Usually if you do 4 words, you're going to give them a long enough click for their thumb to land on correctly, especially when they're on their mobile devices. So hyperlink at least 4 words and give them more than one chance to click a link. And again, we talked about testing. Think about this as a big playful experiment, y'all. And if you're not getting the results you wanted from your efforts, I want you to try something small, try a tweak, test it on a small part of the list, and see what happens. if it goes well, let's deploy it for the entire list. If it doesn't go well and we see a huge drop of engagement and opens and clicks, then let's go ahead and adjust it. And I do want to talk really, really quick about opens and really, really quick about clicks. I believe, and again, I really focus a lot of my efforts on external communications to get people to buy things from us. I believe that paying attention to your clicks is the best metric you can ever pay attention to, because you can't always be guaranteed that the opens is a real metric if you are sending to a list that has a bunch of people that are on different email client providers. So they could be using Outlook, they could be using Gmail, God bless their souls if they're using AOL still, right? Those metrics get reported back differently depending on the platform. And I'm going to say depending on the day, because a lot of them are changing their analytics and their reporting features, I swear, all the time. Go to your clicks. Your clicks are the best metric that you can really, really look at when you're looking at your email efforts and using a mass email system. Ooh, that's a really good point, Sarah B. More descriptive link text is recommended for accessibility too. So if you have someone using that screen reader, I really, really like that idea too. And again, I think that's something that you guys really get to focus on with the internal comms, and knowing those accessibility tricks can also really, really not only enhance the opportunity for your email to be engaged with more, but make it more accessible by more people. So thank you, Sarah. That's a really, really good suggestion here in the chat. If there's any other suggestions that you have that you're like, yes, this works really, really well for me and I want to share it, please share. I think one of the best things that we can do is continue to share, but know that just because it works well for Sarah, it may not work well for me. I need to test it. Awesome. The other Sarah B, good. I love that's how you're kind of looking at that metric and measuring that one thing. Being laser focused is so, so key. Are there any other questions that you all came to today's session? I'm just looking at my horribly handwritten notes. There was one more thing that Leslie brought up with me via email, and it was getting the request to send emails and then the complaint of sending too many emails. Again, each organization is going to be different. So deploying some sort of testing to figure out what works well for your organization is going to be key. And again, if you don't even know where to start, don't make yourself wrong for it. You all are drinking out of fire hoses daily. This is all I focus on. And so if it is bringing in outside help to get your engagements and to run and deploy some of these tests and to be thoughtful of it, that is definitely an ask that I think is important for you all to be making, and an important expectation for you all to be making. I mean, I could go on for hours about job descriptions and how I think jack of all trades and we should be good at all these things is not fair to any of us. But know that you are definitely trying your best. You're doing everything that you can with the tools that you have in front of you, with the tech that you have in front of you. And it's going to take time. And it's going to take testing to see if it really works well for your organization. I don't think I have anything else. If there's any other questions, toss them in the chat. We'll have some time still at the end, but I want to toss it on back to our lovely host and see what else she has to add to this.
I do have more to add, but I have one final question that wraps in segmenting and testing, because I get this one a lot and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Okay.
Let's make up an organization that has a 1,000-person workforce and multiple departments: IT, marketing, membership, call center, facilities, like all the things.
Mm-hmm.
When you are creating that A/B test and you are segmenting your audience, are you taking a certain percentage of each of those different departments, or are you testing by department? Like, how do you do it?
That's a really great question. And so I think it's going to what will determine how you segment and how you test is based off of what data and analytics you're getting now and why you feel you need to adjust your strategy. And so if you feel organization-wide, this isn't performing well, it would intrigue me, if it's easy to do and deployable, for you to do a testing segment of all of those different lists and see what works well. And here's what I'm super curious about. If you know before going into this test what list is overperforming, I'm going to use it as quotes, other lists, what if you just deploy the test to the list that it's not working well, and you let what's working well work well with the group that it's working well with? You
Did
may
y'all hear
not
that? Because I
be
know
able
a
to
couple of
change
you
it.
on this call have asked me that question. So
Yeah.
You may not be able to change it organization wide. Your IT people and whoever else segments may read the emails, and then, the salespeople and the lobbyists may not be reading the emails. And so we may need to tweak it to catch their attention, because they're probably externally communicating with a ton of people. Where usually my IT staff are probably only talking internally. The same with my accounting staff. So they may be reacting to the email in the way that we're creating it. And the ones who are missing out and the ones who are probably asking the most questions may need a different format or a different way of communicating. But I don't think it can just be one way or another. Every organization, the whole organization, you really have to look at your data and you have to make really smart strategic decisions. And here's the thing, if you do something and it goes totally wrong, go back to the other way. At least it was working better than this way.
you automatically increased everything just by making that
Right?
decision. Thank you. I am blown away, but not surprised by this amazing presentation and everything that you just gave to everybody. I'm not wrapping things up right now, but I do just want to give you a hand and say thank you. Thank you so much. Your way of explaining things makes it very easy to understand. Folks, if you are interested in additional help from Amy, we've got her contact information in the various emails that we've sent, but I will definitely be sending it with the event post wrap up, with the recording of the video and all of those things. So just know that your opportunity to work with her does not end here today. And I would encourage all of you to reach out to her. Since we are part of similar groups, she's worked with organizations very similar to your size, type, and or industry. Now I'm going to go back to my slides. Okay, so let's get this computer going again. Fantastic. Okay, so now we're going to take this great information and we're going to plug it back into the world of internal comms, which is where I sit comfortably. And now you'll have the tie-in to all the other things that you're doing. What I want you to know is that if you are here, you have a deeper problem than just your newsletter. It's kind of a little bit dry and dusty and lots of crevices, and it's hard to ascertain what that problem is when you're focused on just one piece of it being broken. And I say that in quotes because your newsletter isn't broken. None of your channels are broken. They just aren't optimized yet. So if you have this deeper problem than just your newsletter, what you also need to know is that looking at the larger integrated ecosystem is your solution. And that's really what I want to emphasize here. Your newsletter lack of engagement is a symptom of the larger structure of your internal communications needing some help. And so we're looking at it through the lens of what we've always discussed in these webinars, that we are utilizing an integrated plan with a root message and channels that overlap each other in order to move our messages forward and to create that dialogue with the people that are doing the work. In simpler terms, what we're doing is we're taking the idea, and I'm going to use return to office for this idea, and we are potentially segmenting, as Amy discussed. Let's say we have the facilities folks that stayed on site during the entire pandemic and never worked from home, and everybody else. So we have two segments. We may be taking that root message of we are returning to the office and segmenting it in two forms, saying, hey, everybody else, we're returning to the office. We're all going to be there by September 5th. But we're taking that message and segmenting it to the facilities folks and saying, everybody's returning to the office September 5th. We want to thank you for staying on site during this difficult time and keeping the wheels on the bus. We are here to support you as people come back into the environment. And here are the resources that you need to know about so that you stay on top of the game in advance of their return. You see how that message is a root message of we are returning to the office, but it goes into two different kind of directions that run parallel. Yes, we're all coming into the office, but we're saying it in two different ways to different people. So now that we have these segmented messages, we're looking at the channels. And as you can see up top here, the very first one is our newsletter. Now, oftentimes in our newsletter, what we're trying to do is communicate to everyone at the same time. We've talked about this in today's session. If that's the case, we may be interested in taking the root message and looking at it from the newsletter, the multimedia, the intranet, and maybe our project management tool channels, and massaging that message in different ways for each of those channels that layer on top of each other and that feed into each other and ultimately drive to our intranet, our channel and location that houses all of our information, our historical information, our initiative information, our goal information, our handbook information, our organizational awareness information. Our intranet is the house that we've designed that we want everybody to eventually go to, and our channels push people there. In our messaging, we're looking at the ways that we're pushing people there. So our root message is we are returning to the office, return to office is happening. Our intranet probably houses the information about parking passes and travel stipends and how to contact IT for getting your hardware set up on your desks and facilities to figure out where your desk is even at these days. Your intranet houses that. So how do we use the remaining channels? Your newsletter, your multimedia, your project management tool. Actually, I should update project management to probably be digital signage. But if you think about all of the different types of channels that we have, maybe your newsletter turns into that prompt heavy, beautifully laid out click farm that people can get a snappy overview of what the piece of content is, be able to have a hyperlink and click directly through into your intranet to get more information. So I hope that what you're seeing me describe here is a structure, a strategy for how you deploy the information that is your root message, but a structure as you utilize all of your channels, driving people eventually toward your intranet. In the best of all possible worlds, your intranet is the place where your people feel happy and they feel like they understand the content that's there and they feel as though the user experience is great and they are confident that they know that whatever they need, it lives there. For those of you that don't have an intranet, you may still want to utilize your newsletter or your digital signage to drive people somewhere. Maybe it is your cloud drive for documents that house larger pieces of information like your handbook or like your communications policy. Or maybe it's a shared cloud drive that has a folder dedicated to this return to office that has the plan and the office map and the contact information for important key people in this initiative. We're always trying to take this big view, structural framework vision of our internal communications and make everything work together to the best of our ability. Depending on the number of channels you have, the direction that you're driving people may be different, but the purpose for our newsletter and our digital signage and oftentimes our mass emails is to give people a brief overview of what is possible, what they might be able to learn, and then give them the option to learn more about it at a static place where information is housed permanently. So in order to show this in a different way, how things build on each other, our channel assessment really is what we're talking about with regard to the newsletter. We are assessing whether the newsletter is an appropriate and useful, an appropriate and fruitful use of our time. Some of you asked the question, do we need a newsletter? Not everybody does. So maybe you decide after some testing that it's really not the best use of our time. It's not the most effective way to share information. Channel assessment tells you that. It looks at all of the channels that you utilize and finds out from the perspective of the people who seek out information or need to be informed, which channels work best for them. Because I guarantee you, an association where everybody works in an office is going to have drastically different needs for their channels than, say, a manufacturer or an organization that installs solar panels, where most all of their people are out in the field. Deskless workers have different needs than those at desk. Their channel needs, their way that they receive information, those needs are different. So your channel assessment tells you what's worth keeping and what you can save some money on by getting rid of, and which ones you need to double down on because everybody likes, and maybe those that need to get a little bit of polishing, like your intranet needs an easier UX. You don't like the colors, or the design is antiquated, or the information isn't set up in a way that's organized that everyone understands. That's what your channel assessment does. It tells you where you share information. Your communications policy builds on that. It tells you how you share information. It gives you the rules by which people find information and how information is distributed and crafted, and how the system works. Your content calendar tells you when you share information, and your messaging campaign model, as we've discussed a couple different times during the series, organizes the where, how, and when you share information. So this is just another kind of graphic way of showing you the layers of how the larger scope of the internal communications universe fits together, and where today's information really gets to the point, and which step we start with. And that is all of Amy's information and the great guidance that she gave us. Before we roll into our last of this series event, which is on August 21st, that will be discussing how we move the needle with leadership and decision makers about how to undertake internal communications, the importance of it, how it applies to operations, why we need to pay attention to it, how it impacts retention and job satisfaction, and all of the good things, operational excellence. I want you to ask the decision makers at your organization 3 important questions. How much time do employees spend in unproductive hunting for information? Have you measured that? If you haven't, it's an important measurement to not only capture, but to understand over time whether things are getting better or things are getting worse, is indicated by the amount of time people spend looking for information that they can or can't find, which rolls you into the second question, because if they can't find the information, how much time do your team spend fielding questions that have already been answered in previous communications? For example, if most of your newsletter articles come out through your people and culture or your human resources department, how often are your human resources people fielding emails and phone calls about things that have already been answered in that newsletter? If you're not capturing that data and the amount of time wasted doing that, that's an important metric for you to capture. So you're looking for how much time is your workforce spending looking for stuff that they can't find, and then when they can't find it, how much time are they wasting of somebody else's asking the question that's already been answered somewhere else. So you see how we're compounding the problem and making it more expensive each step of the way. how much money does this wasted time cost the organization? So these 3 questions are going to prepare you for our conversation on August 21st. And I think that if you get into the question and answer mode with the people who make the decisions and nobody's tracking this, between now and the next 3 weeks, you might find a little bit of curiosity bubbling up to the surface. And that's where we're going to have some really robust conversation. Your bonus strategy question is, how much time as internal communicators do you estimate that you require of your workforce in order for them to maintain being fully informed or to get fully informed? In other words, if I am a worker and you're sending all of this information to me, about how much time per week do you think that I should be taking to read, review, absorb, listen to all of this information so that I am a fully informed, highly informed, really capable worker that understands your initiatives and messages and goals? How much time do you think that takes? Because this is a deep conversation that we will be diving into at our next meeting. It's going to be much longer than you think. That's the bottom line. And it should be interesting for us to have this conversation. I invite you to join us. And I will be sending out information about how to do that. But save the date for August 31st at 12 for 90 minutes, 12 Eastern, I should say. And I'm grateful that you have all joined and shared of yourselves. And I hope that you're walking away with some really great answers to the questions and some actionable items that you can implement as soon as tomorrow or today later if you go have some lunch and decide to change the world this afternoon. Amy, thank you. Thank you again for your time and for your expertise. I just could not be any more grateful, and I'm grateful to everybody who showed up today.
Yeah, and me too. Like, I think, again, you guys made it really easy for me to come on and give you some very laser focused advice based off of your questions. So thank you all for sharing. Elizabeth, what is it, Wednesday, August 21st that this next session is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just want to make sure. I thought you said 31st. I'm like, I think that's a Saturday.
Oh.
So, all right, good. I'm glad I had cotton in my ears and y'all probably heard that correctly. But if you have any questions, we have a few minutes. Feel free to throw them in the chat or say, I have a question in the chat. Let's unmute you. Let's let you voice your question. I think that always brings some more clarity. And Danette, this is so great that I love that you're able to find some nuggets to deploy immediately. So that's really, really good. Any other questions today? Any other answers either? Good. Well, know that we're here.
Everybody.
You can email us if you think of something after you go have lunch or even in the next coming days that you want to ask. I think I've emailed you all, so feel free to reply all, and we would love to help you.
And don't forget to connect on LinkedIn for both of us. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Bye, y'all.